Merry Christmas, everyone. Today, on the Feast of the Holy Family, I would like to speak with you concerning subject matter that will result in this being more of a topical sermon than an exegetical biblical homily. It concerns an important topic of recent events, and consequently, because I believe that it is very important, this will be a longer sermon than you're used to. I'm sure that many of you are thinking to yourselves, is that even possible? But I will prove that it is, and moreover, the doors are all locked from the outside. Just kidding. So, this being the Feast of the Holy Family, let us remember that we may understand our Catholic Church as God's spiritual family on earth, which is the protector, the proclaimer, and also the actualizer of God's plan for marriage and the family. Also, remember that our Catholic faith affirms the Magisterium's infallibility in two areas, faith and morals, when she makes definitive pronouncements concerning them, and moreover, that it is impossible for her even to legislate discipline that would ever bring harm to souls. I have emphasized this point now for years, stating that for one who has Catholic faith in the Magisterium, that one never need worry that the Church, as confirmed by the Petrine ministry, will ever defect in these areas, compromise with the world, lead souls astray, confirm sin, etc. Now, individual Catholics, you, me, a priest, even bishops or cardinals, can say whatever they want, but that is not the Magisterium. That is the teaching office of the Catholic Church, the whole body of bishops teaching in union with the successor of Peter, or Peter's successor, the Bishop of Rome, teaching himself in a definitive manner. I have noted now for many years a core issue for contemporary Catholics, which is why I chose the optional set of readings for this feast day, which emphasized the faith, that is the trust that Abraham had, our father in faith, and an example which the scriptures hold up for us. Namely, many Catholics today are finding their faith in God's providential direction and protection of the Catholic Church tested, just as Abraham found his faith, that is, trust in God, tested. And we may contrast the serenity that a Catholic may enjoy proceeding from trust in the providential protection of the Magisterium, as opposed to the anxiety which understandably but inexcusably results from a Catholic who actually doubts or is suspicious of this uniquely Catholic principle. And so a usual progression might be that the Church speaks, the news spins, a Catholic receives the Church's teaching indirectly, namely through an outlet. That person is misled, having trusted the outlet, leading them to distrust of the Church, and perhaps, if they are really interested, that person might spend quite a bit of time doing research into the details, but then in the end, lo and behold, there is in fact nothing erroneous with what the Magisterium taught, but there was plenty of wasted time and energy. So may I suggest, as your pastor and as a priest and pastor of souls in general, start with trust of the Church and distrust of media outlets. I regret very much feeling that things have become so bad that I actually have to say that second part, but I honestly believe that I do. Our recent example concerns what should have really been a fairly obscure document issued by one of the Vatican offices, which, since it was confirmed by the Pope, is part of the papal magisterium. A document concerning the blessings which priests may or may not offer in certain circumstances. Thus, this was really an instruction for priests, not the general Catholic population. It was offered as a response to numerous inquiries sent to the Vatican concerning the application of blessings to people in relationships, be they heterosexual or homosexual, that cannot be reconciled with God's teachings on marriage and sexuality. And since we know that the world has been championing certain things contrary to our faith for decades, pressuring the church to conform to the world, you have to imagine that the Vatican has received hundreds, maybe thousands of inquiries from laypersons, from bishops, from cardinals, from priests. What may we do? What may we not do? What should we do? And what should we not do? This document then intended to respond to such questions. Now, a context that might not be appreciated by your average Catholic, your faithful Catholic in the pew, who hopefully has his or her spiritual house and life in order, but something that is appreciated, especially by priests, is that there are people who have gotten themselves into extraordinarily complicated situations as a result of their having lived sinful lifestyles, but then who reach a point at which they desire to live the Catholic faith and conform themselves to her teachings. That is one group. On the other hand, there is a very different group. Those who are attempting to conform Catholic teaching to validate or affirm their sinful lifestyles, which they are unwilling to change or repent from. Specifically, there are today in Germany a subset of its bishops who are agitating precisely for this, the corruption, the formal corruption of church teaching and practice as regards both heterosexual and homosexual couples, so much so that it is an open topic of debate whether there is risk of formal schism beginning out of Germany, which would then possibly, if not likely, lead to other regions also. This has happened before out of Germany. Only a few hundred years ago, a mere priest, no different than myself, lit a wildfire in Western Europe which broke Western Christianity apart. And note that those violations of unity have not yet been healed. Therefore, please appreciate that once the domino effect of disunity really begins, it is not only extraordinarily difficult to stop, but it is virtually impossible to heal. Not completely impossible, but virtually impossible to heal. Therefore, I think, along with others, that Pope Francis has been trying to diplomatically keep such agitating parties in the fold of the Church, while also affirming the Church's teachings on morality and discipline, lest further disorder and worse disunity result that cannot be healed. And I think that Fiducia Supplicans was part of this effort. So, the headlines resulting from the issuance of this document out of the Vatican were quite remarkable. Let me now quote to you verbatim some of them which I noted. This was December 18th or 19th. From a secular news source, and a mainstream one at that, CBS News. Quote, Pope Francis approves ritual blessings for same-sex couples. End quote. The headline of a Catholic theologian with a YouTube channel, Pope Francis approved same-sex unions, question mark. Another from a popular Catholic podcast, did Pope Francis approve blessing gay unions? From LifeSite News, breaking, Pope Francis publishes norms for clergy to bless homosexual unions. From the channel of a popular Eastern Orthodox priest, forbidden blessings, the extremely scandalous decision of Pope Francis giving his priest his permission to bless homosexual unions. And finally, from a radical traditionalist site, the danger facing bishops because of Francis, note this term, diabolical decree. Okay, that last one is from a site that is purportedly Catholic, and yet the suggestion here, if not accusation, is that the Pope has issued a decree that is satanic in nature. Okay, so those were some headlines. So it's December 18th. It's 1 week before Christmas. All of a sudden, I begin receiving text messages. People taking me aside. Email. I have no idea what's going on. Why? Because I'm a priest and it's 1 week before Christmas. I'm trying to get ready for Christmas. I have no awareness of a document being issued out of a Vatican office, and yet my people are getting disturbed and agitated, so something is obviously going on. And let me just say too, I'm flattered that you feel comfortable contacting me if you're confused or disturbed. Okay? So, whether I wanted to or not, and I didn't want to, had to find this document in its English translation, print it out, read it, and then, more than just read it, devote hours and hours and hours listening to various people's presentation of, dissection of, and analysis of, from all kinds of perspectives, this fairly brief document, so that I would be able to share some reflections with you that would be of benefit in the context of today's Feast of the Holy Family, since the topics coincide. Now, it goes without saying that no church document can cover everything or be perfect or satisfy everyone, but let me say that I think that traditional, faithful Catholics like you and me, both laity and priests, would have liked an authoritative document from the Vatican that explicitly reaffirmed the Catholic teaching that marriage is the exclusive, stable, and indissoluble union between a man and a woman naturally open to the generation of children, and that sexual relations may only find their natural and proper meaning in that marital context. Moreover, I think that we would have appreciated a document that explicitly stated that the Church does not have the power to impart blessings on unions of persons of the same sex. That would have affirmed that a blessing requires that what is blessed be conformed to God's will. And I would say that we priests would have appreciated a document explicitly forbidding any formal, ritual, or liturgical blessing of couples that could lead to scandal or interpretation of affirmation of sin. And priests, I think, too, would have appreciated the Vatican protecting them from any coercion into having to perform blessings that they felt uncomfortable with, or even maybe explicitly forbidding bishops from establishing procedures or rules or rituals for such blessings, as one might expect to be the case in Germany, for example. So that's a short list of some of the things that I think serious, faithful, traditional Catholics would have liked to have seen in this document. And you know what? Every single one of those points is explicitly included in Fiducia Supplicans. But reading the headlines, or articles such as I listed earlier, you might have been led to think, in fact, the exact opposite. Let us make an example of CBS. Pope Francis approves ritual blessings for same-sex couples. No. In fact, Pope Francis explicitly forbids ritual blessings for same-sex couples. Remember that Catholic theologian asking rhetorically, did Pope Francis approve same-sex unions? Answer, no. The Catholic podcast, did Pope Francis approve blessing gay unions? Answer, no. LifeSite News, Pope Francis publishes norms for clergy to bless homosexual unions. False. The Eastern Orthodox priest, Pope Francis scandalously gives his priest permission to bless homosexual unions. False. The Radical Traditionalist site, the danger facing bishops because of Francis' diabolical decree. There is absolutely nothing diabolical in this document. I noted in reading Fiducia Supplicans that not only was the term optional used concerning the blessings and questions, which I will describe momentarily, but moreover, the only time I can remember this, the word spontaneous was used no less than 4 times. The Church makes this absolutely critical distinction between the blessing of sinful unions, which she cannot, must not, and will never bless. She does not bless sin, as opposed to the blessing of persons, which she does do. This document explicitly forbids blessings that concur with civil union ceremonies or employ any clothing, gestures, or words that are proper to a wedding, stating that the only blessings which may be permitted are informal, rare, and spontaneous circumstances that do occur, such as people while on a pilgrimage, in a visit to a shrine, or again, only Vatican document I can ever remember going to such lengths as to give examples of obscurity that they even explicitly said the accidental meeting of a priest on the street. Yes, it does happen, of course. So, as opposed to the headlines that I shared with you, which actually existed, there could have been headlines that just as easily, but far more accurately, could have read, Pope Francis rejects calls for blessing of homosexual unions in new Vatican document, or Vatican forbids bishops and their conferences from requiring their priests to bless gay marriages, or Catholic Church stands firm on rejection of homosexual lifestyles as sinful and refuses to allow any form of blessing in churches with rituals or even with clothing that resembles that used in weddings. Or Pope's doctrinal office condemns all sexual activity outside of heterosexual marriage as sinful. Or Vatican pushes back yet again on movement to legalize gay marriage in another doctrinal rebuke. All of those could have been headlines, and they would have been accurate, but representing the Church's position, of course, in a much different light than what everybody saw on the web or on their smartphones. Of course, an accurate presentation of the Church's position was not what was spun by media outlets, be they secular be they Christian but not Catholic, or even purportedly Catholic. So we must ask the question, why? And here is the tragically simple answer: money. Money. There are extraordinarily few people who make no money whatsoever if you go to their site or podcast or channel and listen to or watch what they have to say. YouTube monetizes royalties from ad revenue. CBS makes money off of ad revenue. Conflict and intrigue is profitable. Harmony is usually not profitable. Clicks make money. Clickbait is effective, but responsible journalism and precise theology is boring. And so, if somebody saw a headline, Pope Francis issues ritual blessing approval for gay unions, you go, what? Click, money, done, achieved. Did Pope Francis approve blessing of homosexual unions? Question mark. Oh, YouTube channel, ad revenue, money. Here is what Fiducia Supplicans allowed. In response to the various inquiries that the Vatican has received, she authoritatively stated that the only blessings that could possibly be allowed would have to be informal, spontaneously requested, free from all possibility of misinterpretation or scandal, and directed only to the persons requesting them and not to any irregular union or sinful relationship. The Church affirms she cannot ever bless sin, she cannot affirm sin, but that she can and sometimes must bless persons, not necessarily their relationships, and certainly not their sinful ones, but persons. So, having read the document in full, and I'm sure that most of you have not, let me give you two examples that I have come up with from my own imagination, from my own priestly experience, but also within the schema of this document. Let's say that, taking the example given, accidentally running into a priest on the street, let's say that someone runs into me in an airport terminal while I'm waiting for a flight, okay? And this couple, a man and a woman, approach me and they ask, "Are you a Catholic priest?" To which I would, of course, respond, "No." Just kidding. I would say, "Yes." Okay? And then they say, "Father, we are in kind of a difficult situation. Each of us married a different person, divorced those people, married each other, of course, invalidly. We are unable to be validly married. And we had 3 kids together before our conversion. We're doing our best to raise our children in the Catholic faith. At home, we live as brother and sister. It's challenging, but we make it work. But we are finding that on this family vacation, with hotel contexts and so forth, we are really being tempted to violate our promise of celibacy. Would you give us a blessing that we persevere on the rest of this trip?" And I could say, no, I will not bless you. Fiducia Supplicans gives me the option of saying no. I would not say no. I would be happy to bless such a couple. There's no risk of scandal. I'm not wearing a stole or garb. We're not in a sanctuary. There's no confusion. They're not asking me to affirm they're invalid marriage or anything like that. They're just people of goodwill who, as I say, have gotten themselves into an extraordinarily complicated situation, and they're asking a priest whom they ran into in the airport for a blessing. I'd be happy to give them that blessing. I have, in the past, been a priest chaplain on a Catholic pilgrimage involving hundreds of people on multiple buses in the Holy Land traveling about. I'm one of multiple priests who are there to serve the spiritual needs of the pilgrims. Again, pilgrimage is an example from the document. Let's imagine that I am there in the Holy Land, and out of all of these strangers from around the United States, a pair of women approach me, and they say, "Father, for many years, we who were raised in the Catholic Church but left her, we live together in an inherently sinful way. We have a house together. We have legal and economic entanglements that are very difficult to extricate ourselves from. But only a few months ago, by the grace of God, we had a massive conversion at the same time, and we have returned to the Catholic faith of our childhoods. That's why we're on this pilgrimage, Father. Would you pray a blessing over us that we would be given the answers that we're looking for as to how to move forward?" And I could say, "No, I will not bless you." But I could also say, "Yes, I will bless you." Because what you are requesting is in conformity with what the Church has explicitly taught concerning permissions that priests may have for such requests. However, one might argue those two examples are so rare and restrictive as to be practically absurd. That is precisely the point. I have just demonstrated with those two examples that the Catholic Magisterium has once again affirmed moral truth and rejected error to such a high degree that the only practical examples of even possible blessings must be in conformity with God's plan for human sexuality, informal, non-ritual, free from compulsion, and utterly spontaneous. So, may I suggest two lessons which may be drawn from this whole affair. Again, I am sorry to have to suggest this, but I feel that I, as a pastor of souls, I have to suggest to you, be suspicious of the motivations of media outlets, even if they purport to be Catholic, when they represent the Catholic faith, the Catholic Church, or her leaders. Do not assume theological precision. Do not assume neutrality. Sadly, maybe we cannot even assume any longer goodwill, but rather should presume bias, spin, and imprecision. Not to mention conflict of interest if there's money involved behind the scenes. So, my dear people, think critically. And if something really is important to you, then you will have to take the time to research the original sources, which is time-consuming and can be tedious and burdensome. However, you don't have to do that. If you don't want to take the time, then you can always fall back on lesson 2. Our faith that the Catholic Magisterium is entirely trustworthy, that it never errs in pronouncements on faith and morals, and never compels disciplines that harm souls. You can be entirely serene, just as I was when I heard the news about Fiducia Supplicans, and not lose your peace, let alone your faith. I'll be honest with you. I did not know what was going on behind the scenes when people began contacting me. I didn't know. I could have read a document. It could have said anything. But there wasn't the slightest tinge of concern in my heart when I heard that a document had been issued that concerned something having to do with homosexuality, blessings, etc. Why? Because my Catholic faith teaches me that I can never be misled in matters of faith and morals by the Magisterium. If somebody said, "Did you hear that Pope Francis just issued a document for the blessing of homosexual unions?" I said, "Impossible." "Oh, I saw it on fill in the blank channel." Impossible. They got it wrong. I can't explain how, but I'm probably going to have to waste 13 hours of my life now to be able to go, oh, yeah, lo and behold, another big nothing burger from recent history in the church. All of these years of pent-up expectation. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before the Catholic Church or Pope Francis, this issue, that issue, it's just going to happen. She's going to compromise. She's going to fold. Nope, hasn't happened. Will never happen. Ever. Impossible. That's the Catholic faith. Now, this is a different matter than that of prudence. Prudence concerns acting in the wisest or best timed or best phrased or all around best way possible. God has not granted a promise of perfect prudence, but only inerrancy in matters of faith and morals. And so, a question that could be asked is, on one hand, is Fiducia Supplicans helping to protect Catholic teaching while at the same time avoiding a formal schism? Or on the other hand, is it just feeding right into the hands of the Church's enemies in the media? Should the document have used the word couple in reference to the persons who might be blessed? Or on the other hand, would it have been better to avoid use of that term? Or here would be mine. Was right before Christmas the best time to publish a document on such an inflammatory issue? Really? Vatican office? I mean, since it was more or less for priests, if I was in Rome, I would have said, hey, I'm trying to get ready for Christmas right now, along with every other priest in the world. Maybe a Monday, beginning of a news cycle, 1 week before Christmas, is not the most prudent time to issue a document like this. How about like a Friday news dump in the middle of January or something? But nobody asked for my opinion. But on the other hand, concerning these questions of prudence that people have asked, I don't have all the information. I don't. Perhaps there were very serious considerations that led to the timing or the verbiage of this declaration. And in humility, I and everyone else needs to acknowledge ignorance of such potential factors. Now, this sermon dealt at great length with one particular controversy concerning one particular document, but I hope that you can appreciate that its real point is not about anything in particular, but rather about something universal. The indefectibility and trustworthiness of the Catholic Magisterium under the headship of Peter's successor. What you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whoever hears you hears me, said our Lord. Today there is one controversy, but tomorrow there will be another. But one thing remains constant: God's fidelity to his spiritual family on earth, the Catholic Church, the kingdom of his incarnate Son, which cannot fall to human corruption, but which will endure until the second coming of Christ. You know the phrase that misery loves company, and people wonder, why do miserable people seem to find one another, congregate? Well, it also seems to me that infidelity to faith in God's providence loves company today amongst Catholics. It is easier to surround oneself with like-minded Catholic skeptics than to face the frightening reality that you trust your own judgment rather than that of the Magisterium. Or, simply put, that you are too proud and do not possess the necessary humility to hold the Catholic faith in the midst of testing and trials. You and I do well to remember that 2,000 years ago, many people rejected Jesus wholesale because they spun his words out of context, or had heard others do so, or didn't consider the overwhelming evidence of his divine authority, or were scandalized by his close association with sinners, people associated with intrinsically sinful lifestyles. Even, the scriptures suggest, with prostitutes. Think about that. What would you think if the word around town was that I was hanging out with prostitutes? Would everyone's immediate assumption be, well, I'm sure Father Gilbaugh is just trying to evangelize them? Maybe, but probably not. And I don't hang out with prostitutes. But think about this. Jesus apparently did. Jesus. That's something profound to think about. Similarly, then, in our own time, let us be on our guard against a similar bias against Christ's church and her teachings, or rejection of her divine authority, or scandal because of her close association with and ministry to sinners. I said that I chose the readings concerning Abraham on purpose. Our father in faith, of whom it was written, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place not knowing where he was to go. By faith he received power to generate. He thought that the one who had made the promise was trustworthy. Well, our Lord Jesus Christ has made promises to his Catholic Church, to St. Peter. I believe our Catholic Church is entirely trustworthy, not because of her sinful members like myself, but because of the providential protection and guidance of the Holy Spirit. And I encourage you to that same Catholic faith, even if when, like Abraham, you find that faith tested. God bless you.